Here's another interesting story. A 35-year-old Pittsburgh man has just succeeded in walking to the South Pole. Are you the Pittsburgh? Oh, there you go. Need you know to get those seats. Wow. Took him 61 days to walk 680 miles. Isn't that amazing?
But exploration is about that. It's about setting off on a grand adventure to which you anticipate the result, but you're not really sure what it would be. And in that process and in that journey, you find out things far greater than the goal itself. And that's what exploration and discovery is about. And at around 10 in the morning, we get a radio call from our friend Mark. And Mark has just made the summit of Mount Everest. Mark turns around and starts on his way home, goes down the Hillary Step, which is a 40-foot sheer cliff that guards the summit. He rappels down that, goes down backwards. And at the South Summit, he gets on the radio again. It's now around 2 o'clock, a little late in the afternoon. He's moving slowly, and he calls us. And we hear him. And he says that he's just going to sit down and rest for a minute. And so at 28,700 feet, the height at which many airlines cruise, Mark takes a seat on the South Summit. We listen to him on the radio. What happens when you sit down at that altitude is the cold now seeps in through your climbing suit, and hypothermia starts to seduce you. We still listen to him on the radio, and now we notice that, in fact, as well as sitting down, his speech is starting to slur. This is not uncommon. We know he's exhausted. One of the first things that happens is the blood floods the brain. The lack of pressure, the brain starts to expand in the cranium, and as a natural result, blood is released in to prevent and to give a cushion. We know that blood on the brain is not a good thing. Brad and I realized during this conversation that we've gone from elation and a focus on the summit to we're listening to our friend in his last moments. Now, we don't know each other very well, and this is our first introduction. But if you can imagine boiling water freezing before it hits the ground, you're thinking to yourself, calls of nature. I'm here to tell you it's a planned affair. It's a very quick event.
You were diagnosed at the age of 9 with type 1 diabetes. What possesses you to be a mountain climber when it is not recommended that diabetics be aggressive in physical activity?
Well, that was really the point as a kid. I always grew up with, you can't do this, you can't do that. And part of our objective with the expedition is to demonstrate that with good management, children and adults can live healthy lives with diabetes.
We've had some days in the past with some very stiff headwinds, which register down to about -50. So we're in a pretty volatile environment.
Tell me when you first did arrive there and where you are now.
We arrived about 11 days ago at Base Camp Patriot Hills. From there, we've been pulling our sleds for the last 10 days.
And that ultimately is what this perception is all about. Are we perceiving the right thing about our disease? Do we understand the world in which we live in well enough to make the critical decisions when we need to? Are we overwhelmed by the disease and the environment around us, or are we focusing on the one step in front of the other? Because it actually isn't reaching the mountaintop. It's that journey, it's that process of getting there. And you might ask yourself, well, you know, you have this disease, you have a family of 6, you have a loving and supporting wife. Why are you doing these high-risk ventures? And my answer to you is the same as the answer to my children. When we find that one thing or that one person that adds richness to our life, color, depth of sound, taste, palatability of life, then I think it's our obligation to embrace it to the very best of our ability. Climbing allows me to do that. If I take it one step further and suggest to you that in your everyday lives you have mountains to climb, it may sound crass. Let me suggest that our dialogue speaks to mountains. We challenge people to reach the peak of their performance. I guarantee you none of you went to work aspiring to be at the bottom of the ladder of success. Achievement, overcoming, standing on top, being in the best, that is what human beings are about. And we're no different in that fashion. So I encourage you to embrace that when you next do what you do.